I'll try to start from where Noam stopped. I think the point he made is very important at the very end, to put the situation in a wider context. I'll talk about two things. One, earlier today I was translating clips from the Arab press, and in relation to what happened, I'd like to explain a bit what the reaction of Arab governments during the attack on Gaza and after that. But I'd like also to start on a bit of a positive note in relation to the kind of activities that have been taking place in the United States. We've been watching this from a distance, also participating. Some of us have been veterans of many different campaigns, protests, demos, marches, and something is different this time. I mean, we've been involved in the 2006 war, I mean, the protesting, marching. That was before that, Jenin, 2002. Before that, Ghana, 1996, and you can go back, we can go back all the way to Lebanon, 1982 and before, and in between, there are many. And this time, there was something different, and something that is good, positive in a way. The spectrum of people involved, it was far wider than what we had in the past. We've had different groups that we've never seen before involved that were very effective. Something very significant that I have never seen before. I'm not talking about individuals, but organized groups. Is, for example, Jewish groups getting involved and making a very forceful statement against what's going on. Sometimes some of these things didn't happen, we didn't see it in the press because there's a kind of a self-censorship that they don't want to cover things that don't fit the image they would like to project. So, for example, there was one that, okay, if you look at the internet and or the alternative sources of information, then on January 14, 8 Jewish activists in the LA region chained themselves and obstructed the entrance to the Israeli consulate in LA, while others from the same group were raising banners saying closed for war crimes. We've never seen this before. That was the first time we saw this kind of activity. And I can go on and mention other things of the same. New York Times doesn't mention that. Washington Post doesn't mention. The Globe does not mention that. So what happened this time, in a way it's very significant, I think, is it brought together natural allies that were not, that didn't come together earlier. And by the same way that natural allies came together to protest and to march together, the same thing happened also in the Middle East, on the opposite camp, on the other side. So what we've seen also is that in a more blatant way, the Egyptian government, the Saudi government, these are the main components in the system of domination that the United States is leading at this point today. These came together in support of the attack on Gaza. So one thing I'd like to I have clips here, I've translated some of them, I don't have everything, but the way they reacted to the attack at the beginning and then tried to cover up the way they reacted, because it came to a point where there were too many people protesting within these countries, in Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, throughout the region. And they had to take care of protecting their home front. And how they tried to cover up that, and at the end, when the ceasefire was declared, how they reacted to this, and after the ceasefire, how they behaved as if they were outdoing each other, who is more compassionate for the Palestinians. While they were being attacked in Gaza and they were being killed, none of these people would do the right thing, like Egypt, for example. They were being begged by all sorts of people protesting, asking them to open the border at Rafah, at the crossing point, and they wouldn't do it. I mean, we can discuss why they didn't do it, but this was happening during the attack. Right now, they present all sorts of excuses as to why they didn't do it. But this morning, I was taking, I'll read from a clip I took from a newspaper, one of the Egyptian newspaper, one that is all the time defending Mubarak as to why he's doing what he's not doing. This is a translation, approximate, but it's from this morning. So something that has happened also is that the result of this whole episode, it brought to the surface, which is good anyway, all the differences and all the contradictions they have between themselves, these Arab governments. And Qatar, the little island of Qatar where it's in the Gulf, Persian Gulf, that tried to call for an emergency meeting of the Arab League to try to do something about the Gaza crisis. Egypt immediately said, let's wait because we're working on a ceasefire and we're working out this with the European Union and the United States. As if something is going to happen there and they'll stop the bloodshed. Well, the reason that the Egyptian and the Saudi Arabia did not want to go along with that is because there is kind of a competition as to who is going to be the more, to appear publicly, the more compassionate toward the Palestinians. That emergency meeting in Qatar did not take place. Today, the Egyptian press went overdrive. It's a censored press defending Mubarak. I'll read a few passages. So Qatar launched a campaign against Egypt as regards the Gaza war. It seems Qatar wants to take over President Nasser. Nasser is from the 50s, 60s, as a model for Arab leadership. Let us be realistic. The unilateral ceasefire happened when President Hosni Mubarak called on Israel to stop the fighting. President Mubarak is talking with modern and strong armed forces with 80 million people behind him. Irrespective of ideological differences, all the 80 million people will stand behind him. This is the kind of talk they spread. This is, you have no, this is Al-Masri Al-Yawm, this is one of the main newspapers. Yeah. Israel accepted the ceasefire because Egypt has firmly requested that. Had Mubarak been president of any other trivial country, the idea here is that if it's a president,
any other what?
Trivial country, like Qatar, no one would have listened to him, even if he had 20 TV stations. Well, this is a reference to the Al Jazeera TV station, because this is the base of Jazeera is in Qatar, which is an interesting TV station also. I mean, it's one of the most open TV stations. You can hear all sorts of attack, criticism of all the Arab governments on the condition they don't attack Qatar. But Qatar is a little island of 2 million, that's okay. I mean, right now, to get your information correctly, one has to go either to Al Jazeera or the Lebanese press or to the offshore Arab press, typically based in London. Otherwise, if you are in Egypt or in Jordan or Saudi Arabia, I mean, whatever you read, you have to understand this is official propaganda, and then you have to decipher that and read it through a different lens to understand what's going on. But I want to go on just one more sentence from that editorial this morning. In 24 hours, Egypt summoned in Sharm el-Sheikh the leaders of 2 countries that have the veto in the Security Council, namely Nicolas Sarkozy and Gordon Brown. So Mubarak told them to come over, and they came over. And with them, Egypt brought Germany, Italy, Turkey, and the Secretary General of the United States. So it's Mubarak who is really pulling all the shots here. No other trivial country could do that, even in a month. The world only recognizes the capable countries. Okay, so well, this is the way, this is propaganda. It's all coming this way. I have other clips as to how they reacted to the ceasefire from, I mean, it depends. In Jordan, you would think that King Abdullah of Jordan, if it went for him, the whole thing would have collapsed. In Saudi Arabia, there's something of a different flavor. I didn't bring some clippings. Something that is also very interesting here is that they managed, okay, Mubarak of Egypt King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, they got the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia to say a fatwa, you cannot protest against the king. Well, not protest against the king means that you have to approve the Israeli assault on Gaza. So you had the clerical establishment, the king, the president of Egypt, all of them ganging together. Well, okay, one has to put things in perspective. At the end, and this relates also to the point that was mentioned by Noam at the end of his presentation, these countries are not independent at the end. They're part of a bigger system here. Of course, Israel is the top gun in that region, but they need a supporting cast. So Egypt is protecting the southern flank of Israel. Of course, Saudi Arabia is the big prize. This is whatever they do on the, I mean, this is the oil and the energy resources that, and the whole policy that, I mean, after all, the whole thing is happening because of the energy and the oil that this region is providing. And none of this, I mean, this is the point that Noam was making, none of this can happen were it not for the United States egging them on. I mean, this is the leader, this is the top cap of the mafia here. I mean, they let them, I mean, if it weren't, I mean, in a way, you can say that the warplanes and the guns that were killing the Palestinians in Gaza, these were, okay, yeah, these are American weapons, and the trigger is an Israeli trigger. But none of this could happen if they didn't get the green light from Washington. So what you have here is a system of domination, which is not new. And it happens that Israel is the best to provide is the main enforcer in that region. And then you have these supporting elements, the Egyptian government, the state, Egyptian Saudis. And just as Israel depends for its armaments, for its weapons, for its on U.S. Aid as the largest recipient of foreign aid. Egypt is the second largest recipient. So the other one are also depending and won't do anything without U.S. green light. And in that respect also, there is, I'm going to get to the point of how to relate this to what the kind of thing we do here in this country. We marched this time. It was very effective. We marched throughout the country. I mean, in many cities we saw it. These marches invariably will have banners saying something about stop the Israeli assault and all that. That's good. And for example, in Boston, we'd go in front of the Israeli consulate. That's good. Now, we never, I mean, it's not where I'm in Boston here, but marching in front of the Egyptian embassy or in front of the Egyptian consulate never happened. And that should be the next thing to keep in mind. I mean, this is all part of the same camp there. So there are 5 consulates, Egyptian consulate and embassy. These should be included. I mean, they were just as complicit in that, what happened, as the Israeli. And we should include also how, I mean, we have to find ways, but the United States is at the top of this system of domination. I mean, you can't leave them out. So going in front of the Israeli consulate on the march, wonderful. We don't have an Egyptian consulate in Boston, but I'm thinking more generally.
The trivial country of Egypt.
Oh, the trivial, yeah. But there is an Egyptian consulate in New York, one in Houston. I mean, there are 5 or 6. The same thing about Saudi Arabia. These are very much part of the same camp, and they should not be sort of left out. They got away with murder, really. I mean, the Mubarak, Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, and the little Abdullah of Jordan also. I mean, they really got away with murder here, and they should not be left out. I think I've taken my 10 minutes here, or 15.
You take a few minutes to wrap up.
Well, you know, we're going to have questions.
Yeah, we'll have questions.
Yeah. There was another point I wanted to make, which is related to the wider context also, is I like to say that I started by mentioning, for example, the importance of having organized Jewish groups part of this effort. This is very important. But I'd like also to, it's related, is it could have been the state of transplanted Eskimos in the Middle East, as long as it fits in that system. I mean, and accept to play its role is the same. I mean, and that system of domination in many ways goes back not only to 48, it goes further. I mean, okay, the United States has taken over the role from France and England after the Second World War, but that experience with colonialism is something that goes further back. It predates Zionism in many ways. Zionists came to the region in a strong way around the First War. We can go as far back as that. So it happened that there's a history, one can cover it. There are specialists of history to go that study this. And it's important to see how there's a state there. There's a society that finds it to its interest to vote into power leaders that are very destructive to the region and destructive to themselves. So one has to see this in a wider context in which Israel is fitting in that general system.
Thank you. Assaf Kfoury. So now we'll hear from an Egyptian on our side, Ahmed Shawki.
As a general rule, it's good not to clap before you know what the hell I'm going to say. I gave Noam a standing ovation, as I did not. We all gave Noam a standing ovation because this is a very difficult subject to discuss here in the United States. As Noam and Assaf have pointed to, it is not difficult, or as difficult, anywhere, that's more precise, as difficult anywhere else in the world, including Israel. Read the Israeli press, and you'd get a lot of information about what Israel's aims are, what they're doing. This is not anti-Semitic propaganda. This is quite simply a reading of Haaretz. The day that the latest onslaught on Gaza began, a friend of mine, and it's not to show that I know important people, but people inside Israel have been saying many things that need to be heard in this country, and I've been asked to speak on education or what to do now and so on, but I would leave that aside and simply say that the place to start is to read, to discuss, to think, to act. Now, I don't know if that's the place to start, because I agree with Assaf, the time is now to act. So am I just saying contradictory things? Yes and no. I should explain why they're contradictory. Noam raised the question of a boycott. One of the things I had down, because I know a lot of people who are here, and I've worked as an activist for a long time in this country, and spent some time, quite a bit of time, on the question of Zionism. I remember when I moved here in 1976, doing meetings all up and down the East Coast on Zionism. They were very, very big meetings. However, the composition of the meetings usually went something like this. 100 people in the room. We used to have a security detail because we had to actually physically defend me. I was crazy enough to do it. I was young and didn't really know what I'd stepped into, meaning that there's a special history between the United States and Israel. If you don't understand that, you don't understand why there's a silence and systematic misinformation about Israel today. Most people, I believe, sympathize or have sympathy for or have bought the story that Israel and the Holocaust are related in the following sense, that because of the Holocaust, the Jews of the world have a right to Israel, or some version of that story. You'll find in this book that was not Jewish opinion prior to the Second World War. Meaning, if I'm being clear, meaning very simply that Jewish civil society, Jewish political society, why am I mincing word? The Jewish Bund in Russia, people won't know the references. A Jewish organization voted against Zionism at its congresses. That the majority of Jews at the time were socialist, leftist, I don't know about the majority. a big part of Jewish intellectual life. Noam Chomsky was Jewish. Marxists were Jewish. There were big organizations. They all looked with hostility at Zionism because they said this is a colonial project. It is a project of oppressing another peoples, and understand that there can be no solution to the problem of Palestine because it's not a problem of Palestine, it's a problem of international empire. And if there's not a regional solution, there won't be a solution. Sorry, I get excited. I've been told to speak somewhat more moderately, which is why I've been writing everything, and I'm going to speak the way that I like to speak. My comrades said that, my friends and comrades said that, although you have to be careful using the term. In this country, I used to do that on principle. Hello, comrade, because this country was so obsessed with anti-communism, whereas it's a term you use in the military. Hello, comrade. And I first heard military people using it, I thought, oh my God. But no, okay. This country says one thing and does another. That's another story entirely, which I'll come back to. Because I said I would speak briefly. How long? Have I gone more than 5 minutes?
4 minutes.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the 15-minute thing. And I'm going to start looking at these notes. To do: act, educate, mobilize, divest, discuss, boycott, question mark. That's what you do. That's in under 5 minutes. Good. Let me explain all of them. I think that this meeting is key, and I don't mean this particular meeting, although for me it is key. I've heard Noam speak in a lot of places. You usually can't get in. I went at one of the first World Social Forums. A friend of mine said, aren't you going to go see Noam speak? And I said, yeah, I tried. He said, well, I can't get you in. Anyway, I won't go on with that story. So I'm very pleased. And by the way, I put these books up here not to show you what I'd read. People should buy and read this book. It is a history of the whole conflict published by South End Press called The Fateful Triangle: The United States, Israel, and the Palestinians by Noam Chomsky. The second book you should read is a book from the press that I work with, edited by Elaine Hagopian, which is a response to 2001, and that's focused me back on the subject, which is why I had these props. Okay, we're not going to do the show and tell. I'll come back to what to do. This country, this world has changed massively. It is not the world that I thought it was when I came to the United States. I thought I came to a country where Martin Luther King had been my hero, the Black Panthers, everything. Okay, I moved here in 1976. It's now 2008. This entire country had a problem, not just me, which is that it was the victory of the right over the left. That's in broad strokes. It's not over, folks. Obama's election is a new era. Anybody who doesn't see that needs, needs some of these. Millions of people celebrated by going out or drinking or whatever. I came on a flight today where the flight attendants were beaming. Now, I don't know if they'd been drinking. I don't know if they were drinking. The point is made. However, for the Arab community, the Arab and Muslim communities, that change is not all that apparent. There has been a war of terror against the Arab and Muslim world. We have to understand that. Voices have been silenced that need to be heard. That's not why I'm shouting. They have been silenced. There's now a condition, an illness, unfortunately there's no pills for it, called flying while Arab. Do people know that condition? I can tell you about it. I tried to get on a plane the week after 9/11. And it's a condition that every Arab knows. In fact, there were no people of color in airports. Today people smile at me. Now, maybe I'm a nicer person than I was. That's irrelevant. Every Arab in this room knows the condition. It was related to the condition of driving while being black. And until 9/11, or just before 9/11, it was commonly accepted amongst rational thinking people, not the people who run this country, I mean rational thinking people, that scapegoating in the form of, profiling is not a good thing, okay? With 9/11, profiling is back, big time. And it's assumed that that's how you beat terrorism and its attack on civil liberties, which is why you should read what it means to be Arab and what's happened to civil liberties in this country. Point 3. I'm at 17 right now, but okay, point 3. Assaf and Assaf's book. If you don't understand what happened in Lebanon, you don't understand what happened in the region, you won't understand anything. Sorry. You won't have the necessary tools to properly deal with the massive amounts of propaganda that surround this subject. Noam's books help disentangle it. You need to then read about other things. The reason I paused is that I became an activist at 16. You don't have to read to act, but it's better to read and act, because you'll make a lot of mistakes. I certainly made my share. You say stupid things. You should never be on a podium and say an answer to a question you don't know. Now, that's not a confessional, kind of. But we should learn from our elders in the real sense of the word. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. So, back to acting and Boston. Have I been...
Keep going.
No, I'm not. I'm going to do the 15 minutes. There's a discussion. How long?
You're fine. Keep
9.
going.
9. Thank you. No, I'm trying to prove a point to the audience, not to you, no, to some other people. Okay. Read, discuss openly and with reverence, or not reverence, with comradeship and friendliness and warmth and also firmness. The left in this country doesn't know how to debate. The left in this country, not all the left, some of the left do, but the broad left, actually let me do it differently. The broad left in this country has suffered enormously. I started thinking, well, who is the left in this country? I said it was the ascendancy of the right. I believe the pendulum is going now from right to left. It's not an even process. It's very uneven. It'll be complicated because you don't just come back from an illness and run. That is, we have to learn how to crawl. Well, not crawl. You get the idea. You get the analogy. You have to learn how to do things again. And I believe that Assaf said something, everything he said I agreed with, and said I agreed so much with him that I got about the question of the Arab world, but I'll come to that in 1 second. At this particular moment, because people are awakening, because people are beginning to see that, yes, the free market is not the greatest thing in the world. In fact, the free market, or letting the free market free, unleashing the free market, resulted in the rich enriching themselves and stealing, not just from us, that's obvious, but from each other. I mean, how much did he made off with? Sorry, how much did people don't know the reference. Okay, that is billions. And now they're coming after Social Security, and they're going to go after other things. Billions of dollars were literally sucked out of people's labor and people's time, and the labor movement was put into submission, and this is part of what we need to understand as to what happened in this country, and that no more. I don't personally hold very many grudges. I do hold some grudges against some people. When my son pointed out yesterday, oh look, Cheney's in a wheelchair. He was not making fun of Cheney. It's that I'm in a wheelchair and he loves me a lot, but he was kind of amused and happy. He's a good boy. That's why he's amused and happy. And he's an Arab boy. And he knows that we moved house in 2004 because a man across the street used to put up the American flag and curse at me every time I came out from my house. That's what flying being Arab means. That's what's happening to Arab Americans. And we have to find ways to express the voice of Arab Americans. And Assaf said people are talking. That's true in the Arab American community. I'm Egyptian. I naturalized, and I say that for public consumption. Malcolm X used to say in his speeches, I'm not comparing myself at all to him, but he used to say, good evening, friends, brothers, sisters, and enemies, because I know you're out there. In other words, that people have lost jobs. I'll describe one story in 1 minute for nothing else than believing that there ought to be justice in the Middle East and that they happened to be Palestinians. I went to a meeting that was very much like this at the University of Chicago. a man by the name of Norman Finkelstein, not Arab, but he lost his job for thinking properly about the Middle East. And kudos to Norman. Not for the... I have a difference with him about his thesis on Israel. That's not the point. When he spoke on Gaza with Ali Abu Nima and Mershoff, what's Mershoff's first name? Mersheimer. I'd never met him before. The case he made was compelling. That meeting was at the UFC 2 weeks ago. People should listen to it. It'll educate you on everything you want to know about the current crisis, including what the Israeli press says about it and so on. So we need meetings like this. But back to point. A young man of 19 came and introduced himself to me, and I looked up and he wrote his name down. And I got very emotional because it looked like the handwriting of my son, who's 13. He's 5'11", but it's okay. This boy was shorter, and he looked a lot like him. His name is Ali Al-Aryan. For the Palestinians in the room, you probably know where I'm going with this. He organized a meeting, or he was in a Muslim organization, the president of this organization. You don't become president of an organization at 19, unless your father is something, and I'm not here talking about nepotism. I'm talking about a man who was arrested. Their house was broken into by the authorities in this country, and he was arrested and put in jail and then deported. And that is Sami El-Arian's, Professor Sami El-Arian's son. And I can't imagine what that family has gone through, and what Lelia El-Arian, a daughter, the only one I met of the Arians, have gone through. And I'm trying to convey that that kind of pain, that kind of suffering, that kind of silencing cannot continue to go on in the United States. You know, the world is really clear if you think about it. I won't do the quote now. How much time? 13 minutes. So I've got 2 minutes. And I've lost my page number. Martin Luther King gave a very important speech, which everybody knows, at the Riverside Church. Everybody doesn't know it. By Howard Zinn's and Anthony Arnove's Voices of the People's History. It's a wonderful book. I'm sorry, I'm a bookseller, but I'm trying to educate, so don't misunderstand my motives here. I want to end with my favorite quote, because all of my quotes from King I like. Sorry, my quote, sorry. I like quoting King because I'll do this, and I know it by heart, but I want to read it properly. And if not, I'll do it in the discussion. I haven't said more about what to do. Okay. I'll read King later. What to do. Attend, support, mobilize. Every demonstration, every picket, every idea that comes up should be discussed. Think about it. If you're not a member of a group, any group that acts on this question now, great. Welcome to politics, and politics is going to be new in this country because they've had it for a long time. It's our turn next. If you're young and don't have a clue, that's a little strong, of some of the references that I've made or anybody else on this panel has made. Learn. It's okay. This is the time to learn. We are at the beginning of a new era. Obama was elected because people want and hope for change. In the Arab world, people want change. They are going to be profoundly disappointed. Not because of any personal shortcoming of Barack Obama's. That's not the point. I think that one of the points that Noam was alluding to about a boycott was that there's such systematic miseducation in this country that people are afraid to touch the issue of Palestine. That should not happen anymore. Break the silence was the name of Martin Luther King's speech. Break the silence means, and by the way, he was attacked by the newspaper of record, pilloried. People stopped funding. He was hounded. Martin Luther King is an icon in this country. If people read what he stood for, really stood for, we'd have a different kind of movement. It's time to break the silence about Palestine. It is good.